We're sorry we had technical difficulties. The rest of the story comes on YouTube, and I already made the video, but my machine cut off by remote control. So anyway, what I wanted to tell you, this is the band, Stories from the Big Pink. And, the Big Pink. What's the Big Pink? Well, Pinkos. If you watched Archie Bunker on All in the Family many years ago, Archie Bunker talked about his son-in-law, Mike Stivic. Mike Stivic was a college boy, and Archie Bunker said, "You're a Pinko," because he voted for, I don't know who he voted for, but Pinko in those days, the 1970s, meant communist. And I don't know if I told you earlier in the video because the technical difficulty, the video stopped. But now people that buy groceries at Walmart have to wait 3 hours. In my town, 3 hours before they can get the groceries. It takes 3 hours to get groceries. You got to line up outside, just like Soviet Union. That was communist Russia. And now there's, 3 hours in order to get groceries. So it's just basically communism has come in the back door because of this Wuhan virus thing that was created in a communist lab in Wuhan, China. Now, in the olden days, even with Republican Richard Nixon, who everyone thought was a bad guy because he made a deal with communist China, only Nixon could go to China, is what they said, because he was a hardline Republican. Nevertheless, he made some deal with China that ended up with all of American industry left America and it went to China. And that's why everything these days is made in China, including the horrible virus, COVID-19. So in those days, they called China Red China because it was communist. And they were basically enemy of the United States, as was Soviet Union, communist Russia, as was North Vietnam, which was communist Vietnam, as was North Korea, which was communist North Korea. And there was actually a war in the 1950s between United Nations, which was the Western countries, until they got taken over by the communist Ethiopians. And if you didn't hear anything, that guy that they keep telling you is from the World Health Organization. He's a communist from Ethiopia, communist Ethiopia, which is part of communist Africa. So basically, they played a sneaky game called Sneaky Pete, where Western capitalists who at one time wanted to be separate from the communists, they joined up under Richard Nixon, and they moved all of the jobs that were not me, but, they used to make everything like fridges and stoves and cars in Western countries, West Germany. They made them in the United States. They made them in Canada. And some cars, I think, were made in Australia, but I was never in Australia, so I can't tell you for sure. And I think that they did make, like Opel was a brand that was a branch of General Motors, and that was made in England. But it was definitely a Republican named Richard Nixon. He was Tricky Dicky, and he said only Nixon could go to China because, I told you that. Anyway, he went to China, he made a deal, and that's what happened under George Bush, number one, the first George Bush, and the second George Bush, and Bill Clinton in the middle, and Obama, who was a communist, and his real name wasn't Obama at all. Everyone knows that his birth certificate is fake, and he should never have been president at all, because everyone knows because of the Truther movement that Obama was not really an American at all. His father was possibly from Africa, or possibly he was adopted by somebody from Indonesia. But anyways, Barry Soetoro was his real name. And they were all in league with the communists. All of them. I'm sorry if you voted for those Bushes and you thought they were good Americans. They weren't. In fact, that wasn't even their real name. The real name of the Bush family is Schiff. Schiff, and that's a German name. And if you look into it, you'll see that because they were Germans, they were actually in league with Nazi Germany during World War II. The first President Bush, George H.W. Herbert Walker Bush. Walker is another one of these Illuminati names. His father, Senator Prescott Bush, was trading with the Nazi Germans, and he was even tried, but somehow it was all sort of let go. It wasn't a pardon, but they just let him off. And then, somewhere along the line, this name Schiff, this German name Schiff, was changed to Bush, but they were Germans, and George H.W. Bush was in the CIA when the CIA assassinated President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy. So George H.W. Bush, Herbert Walker Bush, was also in charge of the CIA, and he was in charge of the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan because their family friend, who was an MK Ultra victim, that means he was brainwashed using horrible mind control, his name was Hinckley, John Hinckley, and Hinckley was the one that he was having dinner with one of the Bush boys not that long ago, or somebody in the family, Hinckley. Hinckley were very close friends of the Bushes. And the child was used as mind control to attempt to kill President Reagan. The strange thing was that the Illuminati like to really screw you up. At the time when President Reagan was attempted assassinated, there was a show called The Greatest American Hero. And the man's name in the show, The Greatest American Hero, his name was Hinckley. So they're trying to say The Greatest American Hero Hinckley from the TV show. It wasn't the same guy, but was the same name in a real life person. He shot the president. Why is it so weird? Well, I don't want to tell you anything that's weird except for alternate versions of reality where, I'm actually the Governor General of Canada and I have a title, Lord Canananda of Canada. And so that's just an alternative reality. But if we ever get to that alternate artillery reality, you'll know that if you see my channel called The Reality Game, I'm also known as Lord Canananda. In other news, Rumpelstiltskin from the ABC TV show now on Netflix, Once Upon a Time, Rumpelstiltskin, well, if you watch the show, spoiler alert, spoiler means I'm going to tell you a spoiler, so if you don't want to know, then please leave me on, because I'm going to tell you anyway. Okay, so Rumpelstiltskin lived in fairy tales, right? He was the one that spun gold because he wanted the queen's baby or something. But in Once Upon a Time, Rumpelstiltskin was a regular farmer, and he was being brutalized by the Black Rider, the Pale Rider. And something happened to him, and he met someone who had this amulet that gave you superpowers, but it made you evil. And so this farmer became Rumpelstiltskin, and that was in fairy tale land, sort of. Maybe it was a new Once Upon a Time fairy tale. But then what happened was the dark evil queen, well, strangely enough, well, this has another story. I don't know how to tell you this, but the evil queen was having an affair with Val Kilmer in Whistler, BC. You remember Whistler, BC? It was where the Olympics were in 2020. Anyway, the evil queen was somebody that worked in the hotel business there, and I knew who she was. And she was having an affair with Val Kilmer, who was one of the guys that was on the U.S. Top Gun team, which is their best pilots. What is it? Well, the evil queen, who was this woman who was having this affair with Top Gun Val Kilmer. Well, in Storybrooke, Maine, in this alternate reality, she became the evil queen. And she was in league with Rumpelstiltskin, who wasn't using the name Rumpelstiltskin in Storybrooke, Maine. He uses the name Mr. Gold. And Mr. Gold ran a pawn shop, and he was in charge of magic. And he always told everyone, in Once Upon a Time, there was a tagline he used, all magic has a price. And basically, you had to sell your soul to Rumpelstiltskin in order to get magic, but you needed magic to get anything done. So everyone in Storybrooke, Maine, came from a fairy tale land, but they sort of had a mind wipe. And you remember in Men in Black, people had mind wipes because when Will Smith came up to you and he had like a pen, and he would flash a pen at you, and it would wipe your mind. Well, that's basically what happened to all the fairy tale characters. They had mind wipes, and then they ended up in an alternate reality, Storybrooke, Maine. And Mr. Gold was there, and so was the evil queen. But she was the mayor, Mayor. The mayor of Storybrooke, Maine was the evil queen. So they all had these alternate egos in Storybrooke, Maine. Now, strangely enough, Mr. Gold also had an alternate version of Storybrooke, Maine, and it's my town, where I live, somewhere in northern Canada, where we still have got a little bit of snow. I don't know if you can see a little bit of snow in the front yard, because everyone knows it snows in Canada 24 hours a day, 12 months a year. So I was working in a nursing home, and there was this man that we'll just call George. And George was there, and Rumpelstiltskin, who talked to me because I wasn't wearing my tin hat by telepathy. And Rumpelstiltskin said, in your world, I'm George. This not that old man, about 65 years old, man in a nursing home. And so anyway, how do I finish this off? Well, George, I just heard today that George died. So Rumpelstiltskin's person in my world, which is your world, because I'm broadcasting live from our world, that avatar, George, apparently died. So what does it mean to Rumpelstiltskin? Well, I have some friends who know Rumpelstiltskin, or the person who used to be Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin, in my world, he's still here. He just doesn't want to play the part of Rumpelstiltskin because he's pretty much bored with the character. And he didn't know what to do to wind up, all the people in Storybrooke, Maine, or in our real world. So it's just got weirder and weirder. Anyways, as you know, Les Nessman on WKRP was pretty much crackers, in other words, nuts. And this is WKRP News, live here from Canada, where I'm updating you on Richard Nixon, who was Tricky Dicky, who was the only one that could go and make a deal with Red China. He did, which was basically to sell out the West to China. So we had to buy everything from China. And then they turned around and bought up, all these treasury notes from the Federal Reserve, which turns out not to be anything to do with the United States. It is a private corporation masquerading as a United States quasi-national bank. But everyone knows that the Fed is not anything to do with the United States at all. It's evil bankers from the 13 families of the Illuminati. And the other strange tale that some people know and some people don't is that Jacob Astor, who was a very rich man, when was it 1912 when the Titanic sank? Well, they made sure that he went on the maiden voyage of the Titanic because he was at Jekyll Island where they set up the Federal Reserve, and he wouldn't go along with all these other Illuminati people for some reason. So they made sure he got on the Titanic, and then they bribed the captain of the Titanic to basically ram a iceberg off Newfoundland, which happened. And Jacob Astor went to his death to the bottom of the deep blue sea because he was on the Titanic. And that's what these people do. They play dirty. So they basically arranged for Chester Benningfield of Linkin Park and his friend Chris Cornell, the lead singer of Soundgarden, to both appear to be dead due to hanging, but they really either assassinated them or faked their death. I can't figure out yet. But it was because Benningfield and Cornell were going to spill the beans about the sex slave industry. And the other people that were killed because of the same information was Corey Haim, who was Corey Feldman's buddy. He was killed. And who else was killed? Oh, Jeffrey Epstein was, we also were told that Epstein killed himself, also all by hanging, suicide. All these people were suicided. And are they really dead, or did they fake their deaths? One way or another, I can't tell you, but it certainly is a very strange story. But this is a story that, even though it's Les Nessman's Buckeye News Hawk Award for Best Reporter, it's his crackers as, Ritz crackers, putting on the Ritz. It used to be a song on the radio in the 1980s. You can put that one on and put that in your head. But I'm telling you the real news about why everything is so screwed up in our world. And it's because you thought Mr. Burns from The Simpsons was kind of an evil person. Well, he was kind of evil but stupid. But he hired really smart people like Waylon Smithers, the homosexual. And I don't know how smart the real Illuminati are, but I know they use members of their own family. They experiment on them because even Justin Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister, his mother was put into a Montreal hospital where the CIA gave her LSD and MK Ultra mind control. They even let us know it was on the national networks, probably back in like the 1980s. They reported that there was an enormous number of people who were treated by a doctor named Cameron, Dr. Ewan Cameron, at, I think it was a hospital in Montreal. It might have been related to McGill University. And Margaret Trudeau probably would have taken LSD voluntarily because she hung around with Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones at Studio 54, which was a great discotheque in New York City. Anyway, she was a very young woman, and she was the daughter of a senator, a Canadian senator named Sinclair. Sinclair is one of the 13 Illuminati bloodline names. So you can see she's definitely Illuminati. And Pierre Trudeau, well, we don't know if he was the father of Justin Trudeau or not, but Justin took on the role of being his son, and now is the current prime minister. This is very strange, but there are some people that say that the communist Fidel Castro looks a lot more like Justin Trudeau than Pierre Trudeau. So they think that perhaps the father of Justin Trudeau wasn't Pierre Trudeau, the previous prime minister of Canada in the 1970s. They think it was actually Fidel Castro. And the connection between Pierre Trudeau and Fidel Castro, well, Pierre Trudeau was a very big fan of Fidel Castro, very big fan. And while the American government wouldn't have anything to do with Cuba, Fidel Castro liked to hang out with Fidel Castro. And the reason was because they knew each other, because they were both Roman Catholic. And they both had a probably Jesuit, can't say for sure, but they had the same mentor who was a Roman Catholic priest, probably Jesuit. And so that was the connection. So clearly the Roman Catholic Church is in bed with the Illuminati and the rigged elections that bring all these weird people to be our elected leaders. Now, Justin Trudeau, when he became Canadian Prime Minister, supposedly through a democratic election, but maybe it was rigged too, one of the things that he said was he was a great admirer of China, modern day China, because it was a dictatorship. And lo and behold, that is basically Justin Trudeau. Just not too long ago, within the past, let's say, two months, he decided that he wanted to make Canada a dictatorship. And he, even though he's he's got a minority government, which means a hung parliament in the United Kingdom, that's what they call it. He doesn't have enough members of parliament to have a majority in the Canadian parliament. Nevertheless, because of this Wuhan virus, he decided, he announced that he was going to make himself dictator-in-chief of Canada, and he wasn't going to use the Canadian Parliament anymore. So clearly, there's an enormous conspiracy going on to turn the whole world communist. If you think I'm insane, I live in Canada, and we have to wait 3 hours in order to get into Walmart to buy our groceries. So, in the end, I've told you everything I can tell you. It's up to you to try and figure it out on your own, but I've been around for a long, long time, and I'm telling you that the world is as crazy and cuckoo and crackers as Les Nessman was, and this has been a WKRP News, and I'm Les Nessman with a new body because I was unfortunately unable to be cloned, so they're just using me, and this is my office here on the floor, just like Les Nessman. If you like my comedy, please subscribe and share me out, because I really want to get my numbers up to about, I need about, I don't know. I basically, I need everyone to follow my news rather than all the other newses, because I'm poor, and I basically want people to pay for me on Patreon. I did open a Patreon account, but lo and behold, I've forgotten the name of it, and I've forgotten the passwords. So, but if, I don't have enough viewers at this time to make it worthwhile anyways. But just so you know, there is a Patreon there. And if I ever get to millions and millions and millions and billions of viewers, then perhaps I'll have enough money to pay somebody to line up in it, the lineup at Walmart to get groceries. Now, strangely enough, this is the way that the Soviet Union was run. They basically had nothing in their stores, but if you wanted to get anything at all, even stuff that you didn't need, what you did is you had to line up. And people got smart in the Soviet Union, and they paid other people to stand in line. So that was people's job, certain people their job was just to shop for other people, stand in line all day, so that maybe you would get a loaf of bread, or maybe you would get some toothpaste. You never knew what they had on the shelf that day, but you bought it anyway. And then there was a black market, and the black market organized things so that if you needed something, you went to the black market guy who had all these other people that were standing in line of the Russian stores to get whatever they could. So in the end, the black market was the black market was basically the way that you survived. And that's probably the way things are going to work in the short term, because everything has gone insane, and everyone knows that black marketeers can always make things work. The most famous black marketeer on the TV show MASH, which was also a 1970s show, was, I think it was the two corporals that were the company clerks. There was first Radar O'Reilly, and then there was Corporal Klinger. And their job was to talk to Sparky on the other end of the military radio and make deals so that, they would trade like ice cream from Navy ships in order to get like antibiotics so that the hospital had antibiotics. This is kind of the way it's going to work, folks. So if you're sort of anti-black market, you're going to starve. I'm Les Nessman for WKRP News.